Training camp is in full swing, and the Seahawks offense and defense are trading punches. With a heavy UW influence on the big league club, we've brought an expert in both programs into the Cigar Lounge today. KJR's Dave Softy Mahler joins us to break it all down. Let's light him up.
I'm Jacson Bevins, and this is Cigar Thoughts.
Welcome back to the Cigar Lounge. I am Jacson Bevins, and along with my translucent producer, Mike Barwin, this is the Cigar Thoughts podcast. Mike, how are we doing today?
We're great, man. Training camp is officially here. Football is back in our lives. We're on the clock, and the Seahawks are on the field, man. It's exciting, but how are you doing? You had quite a trip on your hands the past few days, huh?
Man, I did. I got back from Poland and fell ass backwards into a trip to Bandon Dunes.
What a nightmare.
The number one golf destination on the planet.
I'm so sorry. My condolences.
I know, it's real tough. We got perfect weather. You know, one of my good buddies, Jake Summers, is a caddy down there. I was able to request him. Spent the whole week with him showing me around all the different courses. And like, look, you hear it from everyone that's been there. This is the best place you'll ever golf. It's unlike anything else. And I was like, man, I'm sure it's great. Like, it's going to be awesome. I'm stoked, but come on, really? And then you get down there and it truly is like stepping onto an alien planet, man. Any of y'all follow me on Instagram, you saw the posts, the pictures and the videos. It's not even real life. Damn.
Well, maybe instead of Palm Springs next time, we'll take a little detour over there. Who can really say?
Yeah, it's about an 18-month wait list to get a tee time, but
we'll make it happen. We'll pull some strings.
We should probably get in the queue. No, I'm super grateful for that. Super grateful to my friend Josh Fish for making it happen, to FCA for putting on the event and allowing me to be a part of it, and to Bandon Dunes Golf for exposing the weaknesses in my game. Because I'm a 10 handicap, but turns out I'm a country club 10. That 10 did not travel to Bandon Dunes.
Yeah, not even a Greg Norman 10 could handle that sort of behavior. Yeah.
Oh, man. I got my ass kicked. I shot an 84 at Bandon Trails. That was the only round that looked anywhere near my normal scores. The rest of the time, man, I'm like 10 feet for bogey, 12 feet for double bogey on those greens. It was brutal. But
well, that's what you pay for, right? It's the ego death.
100%, man. Absolutely. Man, how's your week been?
It's been good. It's been busy, just trying to wrap my mind around getting regular Seahawks updates again in the midst of all the other craziness that's going on. But, it's welcome. It's welcome chaos, and I'm glad that we're getting back into the swing of things, man.
Well, it's great because, it's not just projection anymore. I mean, it's still largely that end of July, but we actually have new things happening on a football field. Yes. With the team. And look, we're going to talk Seahawks with one of the best doing it. But before we do, I want to remind everyone listening that Cigar Thoughts is proud to be sponsored by Seattle Cigar Concierge and Glenfiddich Single Malt Scotch Whiskey, two companies of incredible quality. And the big news for those of you who are just tapping back in because it's training camp, we've teamed back up with Seattle Cigar Concierge for an exciting second release of the Cigar Thoughts cigars. That's right. It's the Cigar Thoughts Red Zone series. I know a lot of you are familiar with that already. Seeing the orders come in, it's been super encouraging. And as a cigar enthusiast, it's so cool to see so many people getting introduced to the world of great cigars through this show. The thing about the Red Zone series is it combines a robust taste profile, but with a smooth Connecticut wrapper. And it'll be available to purchase using the link on the show page for the same discounted price of $149 for a bundle of 10 stogies. That's the same price you're used to with the Cigar Thoughts Originals. And my goal with these releases is to provide an avenue to high-end cigars without the high-end cost. This partnership provides exactly that. And the feedback on these stogies has been excellent so far. In fact, one of the guys that I met down at Bandon is a fan of the show. It was cool rapping with Josh Decker. Shout out Josh. He just ordered some of the Red Zones, man, and he's loving them. I was able to share some of those with him when we were down there. It was very, very cool. And these make a great gift. Like, it's not just for you. What a cool thing to give somebody is 10 supreme cigars. And so just make sure that you get some for yourself or for someone else. And you can do that by following the link at cigarthoughtsnfl.com. And look, Mike and I love doing this show, and there are 2 ways y'all listening and watching can help support it so that we can keep the episodes coming. One is by purchasing the cigars, which again, come at an astonishing price for the quality. The other is by subscribing to our YouTube channel at Cigar Thoughts, where you can watch full episodes as well as the funny and insightful clips that Mike puts together. Give a thumbs up to the stuff you like and let us know what you think in the comments. And of course, you can listen to us everywhere you get your podcasts. Now, we've had 2 awesome guests from the Seahawks beat join us over the last couple of weeks, and today we get to wrap with someone with a little different perspective. He is a staple in the Seattle sports media scene, combining analysis with a passion that comes from a lifetime of immersion in Pacific Northwest fandom. You know him as the guy who fills in for me on KJR Sports Talk Radio. He is Dave Softy Mahler. Softy, thanks for joining us.
You have no idea how much I hope that was true, by the way. You want to fill in? You want me to fill in for you? You want to take this thing full time? Go ahead, man. It's all yours, baby. I mean, dude, Mike Jackson's becoming a star, man. He's doing all these radio hits, and I'm going to get Wally pipped here, and people asking when he's coming back, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, please, bring the guy back and get me the hell out of here. I've been doing this 30 years. I'm 51. I got my eye on 2 things, a bar and a golf course, guys. So you want to have me be the fill-in guy for you? Where do I sign?
All right, we'll talk a little bit more about that after the show. But man, you're rocking the Sonic shirt right now. Like, look, I mean, this is a football podcast, but come on, we're a lot of Seattle sports fans here. It feels like it's going to happen, but talk to me, man. The Sonic's coming back?
Hell yeah, they're coming back. Absolutely, they're coming back. I mean, I think as a jilted, skeptical Seattle sports fan, and I don't blame anybody because of all the crap that we went through. Can I say shit, by the way, on this podcast?
Please.
Okay, because of all the shit that we went through, I understand why people are a little kind of, about this whole thing. Totally understand that. Obviously, nothing's done till it's done, blah, 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 yakety yak, all those cliches, whatever. But Todd Leiweke and Tim Leiweke, let me just tell you this. For as much as they love the Kraken and they love the whole hockey thing and they love the whole concert thing, they didn't get into this because of the NHL. They got into this because of the NBA is the end game when it's all said and done. And look, I mean, Todd Leiweke, I think you're talking about a guy that's going to be on the Mount Rushmore of sports figures in this town, period, when it's all said and done, right? Like we talk about Lenny Wilkins and Don James and Pete Carroll. What Todd Leiweke's done for this city, ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. I mean, he brought a hockey team here. He hired the guy that won the Super Bowl. Fired the guy that was here for a year. Nobody does that in the NFL because he knew Mora was not going to work and Carroll's the man. And now he's going to bring us the NBA. I don't know if there's anybody who's had a bigger imprint on Seattle sports than that guy. So, hell yes, it's happening. I think by the end of this year, we're going to know. There's going to be an announcement by the end of 24. I've been saying that for the last year. I think it may happen by Halloween, guys, when it's all said and done. I think we're sitting here and we might be literally months away, 2-3 months away from getting the official word that this is going to happen, and the freaking party starts. And honestly, I don't give a damn when they come back, to be totally honest with you. I mean, I'd love to have them back as soon as possible. I mean, there's people like my partner, Dick Fain, whose dad's like 100 years old, and, who knows how much longer people like that have. You want to get to a damn basketball game for crying out loud. But I think they're going to come back. They're going to come back soon. I think we're probably talking a couple years, maybe 3, but dude, as long as we have the announcement and we can start going to Simply Seattle and shopping for stuff like this, KJR15 for 15% off, by the way, on the website. Thank you. There's going to be a gigantic fucking party, and we're going to enjoy every minute of it, and I can't wait.
Oh, man. Seriously, like, I was trying to think to myself, biggest celebration that I've seen is obviously when the Seahawks won the Super Bowl, as far as sports go in this town. But I was doing a little thought experiment with myself. I was like, what would be the bigger party? The Sonics coming back or the Mariners winning a World Series? I lean Mariners, but I feel like Sonics are right there.
Well, first of all, I don't know if anybody wants to hear about your thought experiments, Jackson, so you might want to keep those to yourself.
That's the only one I can put on this show.
Gotcha. Well, you know what? For a fee, you can hear Jackson's other thoughts. For $5.99, we'll get the hardcore stuff out.
Yeah, man. Cigar Thoughts only fans.
That's right. There you go. Hey, you know what? Whatever. There's an audience for everything, dude. There's no question about that. Somebody out there will pay for that. I've been thinking about that for a long time, man. That the Mariners winning the World Series, I have thought would be the biggest thing the city's ever done, because we waited 50 years for it. You know, growing up, I don't know, you guys aren't as old as me, but growing up in, you know, the late 70s, early 80s, early 90s, whatever, the World Series wasn't for us, right? That was for somebody else. That was for the Braves. That was for the Yankees. That was for Toronto. That wasn't for the Mariner fans. So to get that done after this kind of a wait for how skeptical Mariner fans are and how, let's face it, pissed off Mariner Nation has become, I think baseball touches maybe the biggest demographic of any sport in our town. You're talking about the 4-year-old kid to the 98-year-old grandma, right? Because it's every freaking day over the summer. It's 6 months. It's a part of the fabric of your daily life. I mean, football is, but not like that, right? I mean, in my job, we're doing practices. You guys are covering stuff, too, during the week, and then you watch the game on Sunday. But the average schmuck is going back to work and dealing with, you know, life shit during the week. And then they wait until Sunday where they get their release and they watch some football. Baseball's totally different. So I think baseball, a World Series title, would be the biggest thing this city has ever seen. Obviously, there's differences now. The city's growing, right? I mean, there's more people here than there were 11 years ago when the Seahawks won the title. So I don't know, dude. I'd like to find out. I mean, for me, the biggest party, the parade. If the Huskies could have closed out Michigan, for me, that would have been right up there at the top of the list, because I'm a bigger Huskies fan than I am a Seahawks fan, and I'm a big Seahawks fan, but the Huskies, as you guys know, is number one for me. That send-off, I don't know if you guys had a chance to go when they were on the way to Houston for the Michigan game. The send-off was crazy. I mean, there were thousands of people there that were sending the Huskies off, you know, for that game against the Wolverines. So just imagine what the parade or what the celebration on Montlake would have been like if they would have won that thing. So anyway, let's find out, huh? I mean, dude, we've been waiting long enough. I'm 51 freaking years old.
Let's do it.
My dad died 2 years ago. He'll never have a shot to watch something like that. I swear to God, I thought 2 years ago, Jackson, my dad passed away August 7th of 2022. He died 3 days before his 82nd birthday and 3 days before my 49th birthday, because my dad and I have the same birthday. And I'm telling you, when they made that run, Cal Raleigh hits that home run against the A's, I'm thinking, are you shitting me? This guy's going to frickin' die, and the Mariners are going to make the World Series 3 months after he dies.
Unbelievable. I'm so sorry about that. Well, I mean, I'm so sorry about that, Dave.
I would have taken it. Because it would have been like a gift from my dad up in the heavens or some wacky shit like that. But that would be so typical for my dad to pass away and the Mariners finally make the World Series after he died. So if I have to join him, I'll sacrifice myself. If I have to die for the Mariners to make the World Series, I'll take one for the team. But
hey, man, no offense, but I'm making that trade tomorrow.
For me or for you?
For you. Hey, look, man. I mean, shoot, we could talk Mariners Sonics all day, but at the end of the day, this is an NFL podcast. And look, man, the first post Pete Carroll training camp is happening right now. We got real football stuff going down, and I know how close to this you are, both professionally and personally. So, first thing I want to ask you about is, what are the vibes post Pete Carroll? I mean, this is Mike McDonald running a camp for the first time.
Yeah.
What have been the impressions so far?
First of all, I just this is the way these things run, man. Now I got my brain working about what close friend would you sacrifice for a Mariner World Series title. I'm thinking about that now. Who in my life would I allow to die for a Mariner World Series championship?
The list is longer than you want to admit.
That's right. You know what? You're right. It's pretty damn long. The vibes are awesome. I'm more fired up for the coaches right now than I am the players. You know, seeing Ryan Grubb a couple of days ago, we had him on the air. He was incredible.
Heard that. Yeah.
Mike McDonald doesn't strike me as a first-time head coach. He doesn't strike me as a 36-year-old guy. I mean, I'm 15 years older than this dude, man. We're going from the oldest head coach in the NFL to the youngest head coach in the NFL. And he looks like he's been here for a couple of years. A guy that's got total command over everything he's doing. Obviously, he knows defense, right? I mean, Millen's been on the air with us many times talking about how he thinks McDonald is the best defensive mind walking planet Earth right now. I mean, obviously, there's not a lot of football wizards, over in Europe or, places like Australia, Africa, South America, whatever. But he is a freaking genius. And I think you just go back. The first time I was exposed to Mike McDonald was when UW went to Michigan 3 years ago, and they kicked the shit out of us when Jimmy Lake was the head coach at Washington. And we couldn't do a damn thing offensively. Nothing. Now, we weren't that great that year. That's fine. But never would have thought on that day that Mike McDonald 2 years later, 3 years later, would be the head coach of the Seahawks. So the vibes are awesome. I mean, I just feel like the players here are better than people think. There's a couple of concerns that we can dive into. Linebacker is one of them. I think offensive line still for me until I see it is kind of maybe something I got my eye on. But I mean, Julian Love, for example, right? Like Millen's on the air a couple days ago, and I asked him, who's the guy on this defense that just because of scheme is going to just erupt because of McDonald? And he said Julian Love. And then 4 days later, they gave the guy an extension for $36 million before he even plays a freaking snap for the team. So they know how important he's going to be. I think Woolen's going to blow up in this defense.
He's having a hell of a camp by all reports.
A great camp. He looks like the guy that we saw 2 years ago. I think getting Nwosu back is a bigger thing than people are talking about. We are not spending enough time talking about Uchenna coming back, him and Mafe and Draymond off the edge. I think the front and the back end of the defense is going to just completely erupt under Mike McDonald. The linebackers, though, I don't know, man. You got two guys on 1 year deals for a reason, Jackson, right? Both these guys got to prove it.
One of the things we talked about last week is it feels like kind of a tryout year for most of the people on the defense. And, it sounds like Julian Love already earned his spot, but, the last time we were doing this, he hadn't signed yet. And, I was saying outside of Leonard Williams and Devin Witherspoon and Byron Murphy, nobody's really guaranteed beyond this year. You can project. You thought Julian Love probably still be around, Reek, Nwosu, but at the end of the day, none of that had been codified. And so I kind of dig that this is a tryout year for most of this defense because the offense has remained largely unchanged in terms of the impact players. But on defense, what I felt like we had last year, it was such a bad defense, but to me, it was a bunch of really good, organically sourced ingredients that were cooked poorly. It didn't feel like a lack of talent. It just felt like they didn't mesh. It didn't come together. They were cooked at the wrong temperature. And now you bring in, Gordon Ramsay, and you give him the same ingredients. I'm really excited to see what he cooks up.
Yeah, no question, man. Love the cooking analogies, by the way. Now you got me hungry. I just think that Mike McDonald's specialty is elite defense. It's not defense, it's elite defense. Everywhere he's gone as a defensive coordinator, he's had an elite defense. And why did you hire Pete Carroll in the first place? Well, you hired Pete Carroll because of his elite defenses at USC, because he was a winner in college and he was an elite defensive mind. And I just think Seahawks fans should expect that, right? I mean, maybe it's not fair to expect it in year one to be top 3 or top 4 in the NFL, but I'm telling you right now, I would not be shocked if they took that kind of a jump, Jackson, honestly. I think a lot of people are talking top half of the NFL. I think that's too low. I think those expectations are too low for the Seahawks in year one. I think Mike McDonald's going to have these guys in the top 10 in scoring defense and maybe even total defense by the end of the year because these pieces are too good. You're exactly right. Leonard Williams, Draymond Jones, Boye Mafe, Byron Murphy, Witherspoon, Tariq Woolen, Julian Love. These are good players that should have performed better than they did a year ago. Same thing on the offensive side of the ball. That's why I'm so fired up for Ryan Grubb to get DK Metcalf involved with this offense. But I think this is an elite defense potentially by the end of the year. And look, in the end, it's all about who you play, right? And dude, first 2 games of the year, they got Bo Nix and Drake May. They're going to be 2-0 unless they completely fall on their ass, somehow, some way, and start giving the ball away. They're going to be 2-0 with a great shot to be 3-0 with Tua coming to town with the Dolphins in week 3. So I think the buzz is going to just erupt. It's going to take off. It's going to be fast. We're going to go from 0 to 60 in about 3 weeks with this football team.
Yeah, if it feels like a super soft landing spot for the defense. And to your point, I've been trying to temper my expectations for the defense. There is no way on earth that a Mike McDonald defense is ever going to be as bad as the Seahawks defense has been the last 2-3 years. But it's always taken him 2 years, right? It took him 2 years at Michigan. Some of that's recruiting. It took him 2 years at Baltimore to get them tops. Like, I think they were 25th in scoring when he took over, and then he jumped them a little bit above middle of the pack. And then obviously they won the defensive triple crown last year. Yeah. But if they can get top 12 this year with the offense, like, the offense got a bad rap, I believe, last year because the pressure rate was league high. And something that I've pointed out a couple of times was, and this has largely been in response to, well, Geno regressed. He turned back into a pumpkin. He's Case Keenum. He's Nick Foles. He had the one good year. Nah, man, the metrics don't bear that out at all. Like, Geno Smith, top 3 in sack avoidance. Geno Smith, number 1 in completion percentage when pressured. Geno Smith, number 1 in deep ball completion percentage. Like, I think that he is still a good quarterback, but and the thing that really stood out to me is, when the Seahawks sacked the Giants 11 times, set a franchise record on Monday Night Football last year, their pressure percentage in that game was 46%. 46% of the time they got pressure on the quarterback. Without Abe Lucas on the field, Geno Smith's pressure percentage faced was 45. He was essentially facing that level of pressure every year. And I think he still did good. And that brings me to this battle in camp. We have seen every day as the offense and defense go against each other, they're kind of passing the baton back and forth. It really feels like the defense is winning one day and the offense is winning the next day. And to me, I like that because it's tough if you have a dominant offense that's just carving up a bad defense. That's not really giving anybody a good look at things. The fact that the defense punched back a couple days ago and kind of dominated the offense, and then the offense answered the bell yesterday, and you heard McDonald sound kind of dejected afterwards. I mean, I think it's a little bit performative. I'm saying, the offense won the day. He loves it.
Well, first of all, I mean, I think you got a little bit of both sides kind of figuring out what the other side is doing. Talking to Lockett yesterday, he's seeing stuff on defense that they've never seen before in practice, and
love that.
And Wosu saying the same thing. They're seeing things on offense they've never seen. So part of this is those guys really not knowing what's coming yet. But I totally agree with you that the offensive line, to me, if I'm looking at the Seahawks projected record, it's the same question mark that the Huskies have. Tell me what the offensive line does, and I'll tell you what these guys are all about. Because George Fant ain't going to be no backup on this football team. All right, they're not spending $7 million on a swing tackle. This is a clear sign that Abe Lucas is going to be a little bit further away than we think. And you mentioned the pressure percentage last year. Well, why do you think they blew up the offensive line to Kingdom Come, right? They got 3 new guys. Christian Haynes, Laken Tomlinson, George Fant. I mean, that's as far as addressing a unit, there's not many teams out there that addressed one unit the way the Seahawks did the offensive line. And guys, I got to tell you, Ryan Grubb at heart is a running guy. I mean, people look at Ryan Grubb and he gets kind of pigeonholed into being kind of a bombs away, deep ball guy. Well, you know why he did that at Washington? Because he had Roman Duke, Millen, and Jalen Polk and Michael Penix. That's why he did that at Washington. Are you kidding me? Okay, so this guy, go back and watch the USC game. Go back and watch the Oregon game, especially in Vegas at the last drive of that game when Dylan Johnson on 1st and 20 just shoved it up Oregon's ass 3 plays in a row to win the Pac-12 championship. Ryan Grubb is going to have this team running the damn ball, and everyone's going to benefit from that. I mean, guys, DK Metcalf is basically in a contract year. He really is, because there's no way that he's going to go into fall camp next year without a deal for 2026. So this is his year. This is DK's prove-it year. You're a fantasy owner. Get DK on your team. He's going to blow up. Kenny Walker, Kenny Walker.
I got drafts coming up.
Kenny Walker, Zach Charbonnet. I mean, I almost am more fired up for Charbonnet than I am Kenny Walker, to be totally honest with you, just because K9's been banged up a little bit.
I want to talk to you about this because you are so closely familiar with UW's program, and they brought in UW's offense. It's not just the offense coordinator, it's the offensive line coach. We got Ryan Grubb, Scott Huff here. They are working in tandem, and I think one of the most underrated subplots of the Seahawks offseason is the fact that they're bringing in cohesion between the blocking scheme and the play calling scheme, because at the NFL level, you're like a Fortune 500 company that's headhunting. You're hiring a headhunting firm to go get the best positional coaches and the best coordinators and all of these things. And then they have to figure each other out. They don't have to figure each other out. And I really, really think that that reduces a lot of the friction in terms of figuring things out. But I'm really glad that you mentioned Walker and Charbonnet, because I think this is another really interesting storyline, because you do have running backs who succeed in different ways.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad you brought up the USC game, because when we had Corbin Smith on 2 weeks ago, we talked about the same thing, that, yeah, Ryan Grubb, the UW offense led the nation in passing and all these things. And to me, that was reflective of personnel, because they had 3 NFL wide receivers and a top 10, what turns out to be a top 10 NFL quarterback and a great offensive line, all these things. Yeah. They leaned into their strengths, which is something that I'm always pounding the table for. I think fans, we tend to focus on shoring up weaknesses more than we do about leaning into strengths. And if you want your boat to go faster, you put more wind in your main sail. You don't worry about getting more wind in your minor sails. And so to me, that's what Ryan Grubb does. But the way that he and Scott Huff do their run scheme, I wonder if we're not going to see a little bit more Charbonnet this year.
I think you're going to see a ton more Charbonnet this year. He's too good of a weapon to keep off the field. I mean, he just is. I mean, look at his background. Michigan, UCLA. It's a guy that was wanted by the top, by one of the top schools in the country out of high school, and then transferred to UCLA when things weren't working out there. So I think he's an athlete. I think he's versatile. He's a pass catcher. He's a blocker. I don't think there's anything that Zach Charbonnet can't do. And I think you will see a lot more out of him this year. With Scott Huff and Ryan Grubb, by the way, guys, you're talking about, 2 guys that work together and produce the best offensive line probably in Washington history. I mean, the 91 offensive line would be right there with them, but they didn't win no award the way these guys did. And by the way, the Joe Moore Award is voted on by guys that watch tape, that study offensive line. There's like 8 or 9 people on that committee, not 1,000 like there is for the Heisman Trophy. So that's a significant thing. When you're winning an award like that, that is a significant damn thing. And
how much of that is recruiting and how much of that is coaching?
I think for Washington, it was coaching, because you're talking about a bunch of guys that were already here that couldn't play together under Jimmy Lake and John Donovan. I mean, John Donovan had no more right to coach that offense than you or I did. It was unbelievable, right? When they hired him, tried to sell it. Hey, he's the NFL. People keep telling me John Donovan. I think he's now putting guys to bed in Green Bay like a quality control coach or whatever for the Packers. So to me, the coaching was a huge part of that. Parker Brailsford was starting as a freshman. Roger Rosengarten was starting as a redshirt freshman on those teams. And they turned those guys into players that are now good enough for the SEC. Nate Caleppo from here, not a real highly recruited guy, but now he's going to go play for Lane Kiffin in the SEC. Parker Brailsford starting in Alabama for Kalen DeBoer. Fatano's in the NFL. Rosengarten's in the NFL. So I think they turned all these guys into studs. And the thing about Scott Huff, for me, what he does with an offensive line is he absolutely takes advantage of the strengths of the guys around him. He totally does. This is not a guy who's going to say, hey, follow my lead. If I got a guy in Geno Smith that needs more protection or needs a half a second more to get rid of the ball, I'm going to give it to you. I'm going to find guys, athletic guys that can do that. I mean, this is not – versatility is important, but that's not what Scott Huff wants. Scott Huff wants 5 guys at every position for 17 games in a row. He wants 2005 all over again. He wants Locklear, Chris Gray, Tobeck, Hutchinson, Walter Jones. No messing around. No, this guy can play that spot. No, that guy can play. No,
I'm so tired of that, man.
Tom Cable's not here anymore.
Tired of that.
Tom Cable's not here anymore, guys. We're not looking for tight ends to play guard and defensive tackles to play tackle. Those days are over. So Scott Huff is going to give you 5 guys that will be in the same 5 spots the entire season, unless he has no other choice and DEFCON 1 hits and he's got to start moving guys around. But dude, Jackson, I'm telling you, I'm more fired up for these coaches than I am the players. I really am. I'm more fired up for Huff and Grubb and McDonald and Aiden Dirty. I am so fired up for this coaching staff because I think this coaching staff will get more out of these guys than the previous coaching staff did. And I love Pete Carroll. Who doesn't love Pete Carroll, for God's sake? He's a freaking legend in this town. But it was just time. He knew it was time. He did. I thought he could call the shot when it was all said and done. I was a little bit surprised they fired him, but it was time. And I think you'll find out why starting in week 1. What here, by the way? I'm getting so fired.
That's exciting, and I don't want to spend too much time on it, but I think low key a huge addition to the coaching staff was Leslie Frazier, someone who combines being a player's coach with also being no nonsense, and who Mike McDonald points to as a personal mentor. So to have someone who can say like, "Hey, here's the things to expect." I've been CEO before. Right. Here are the things that are going to be different from being a coordinator. Now, one last thing from
but just to add to that, guys. Yeah. I mean, Ryan Grubb's 48 years old. He's not 35. I mean, he's almost 50 years old, and he's coached in some gigantic college football games. So the pressure cooker of the NFL, and when those moments come up, you're exactly right that Leslie Frazier is going to be able to tell Mike McDonald, hey, let's just look at this. Let's look at a different perspective. Let's kind of take a step back, whatever. Check this out. I think Ryan Grubb is going to do the same thing. And Ryan Grubb is the most important hire for Mike McDonald because he's the head coach of the offense. I mean, I'm very curious to see how much Mike McDonald sticks his hand in the cookie jar when it comes to offense. I was just going to
ask.
Because we know that Pete was doing that with Shane Waldron. We know he did it with Darrell Bevell. Hell, he was doing it during the Super Bowl in 2014. We all know that. There's no way Darrell Bevell made that call by himself, and I know for a fact he did not make that call by himself. But that was, 11 years ago. Let's not ruin the vibe of the show here. I just think I'm very curious to see how much authority Mike McDonald gives Ryan Grubb. Does he back off and just say the offense is yours? You do what you got to do. When there's special moments that come up, we can discuss them, but that's your baby. You're the head coach of the offense. I think he will.
Well, my favorite coach in the NFL is John Harbaugh. And I think one of the things that really sets him apart is he's a master delegator. He's got specialist coaches. He's got a timeouts coach. He's got a fourth down coach. He's got a review coach, right? Like he's saying, I need to keep my mind on the big picture. And so I'm hopeful that we see some delegation there because, I think the Harbaughs are to football what the Hurleys are to basketball, right? Like they're the first family of football. And the fact that he has spent basically his entire professional coaching career with the Harbaughs can only mean good things. Even though Jim is kind of like the classic Seahawks villain from the Seattle Glory days, he's a hell of a football coach, right? So yeah, exactly. Wins everywhere he goes. Last thing I want to touch on with camp before we zoom out to the offseason as a whole is, when Seattle traded significant draft capital to get Sam Howell, there's a lot of talk that, hey, this is either a quarterback battle in camp or B, a contingency plan. Do you see either of that with Sam Howell, or is it just we need a backup that can keep our nose above water if Geno goes down?
I think Sam Howell has as good a shot of winning the starting quarterback job as Mike does. Okay, to be honest with you. Which is
what the hell are you trying to say, man?
Yeah, and Mike stinks.
I'm saying that you're an unathletic turd, is what I'm saying. No, I have no idea. You might be
validation.
Might be an athlete. Mike could be an athlete. Look at Jackson. Look at those guns, for God's sakes. We know Jackson's an athlete. No, I if you've been to camp, and I know you guys have been out there watching this stuff, this is not Geno versus Drew Lock, right? Drew Lock a couple years ago, a lot of people barking about him not getting a shot, gets the shot to start week 3 and then gets COVID and never has a shot to show anything. And then Geno was off and running, obviously, a couple years ago. But I don't think Sam Howell has any shot to win the starting quarterback job. I think it's even a bigger gap now than it was when Geno Smith and Drew Lock were here. Honestly, I wonder if he's third behind PJ Walker right now, guys.
Is that right?
I haven't seen.
He's had a bad camp. Sam Howell's had a bad camp.
Well, it's a bad camp, but he also may not be a great practice player. I got no idea, man. The guy came into the NFL last year, and he led the league in interceptions, right? We know he threw the ball a ton. We know he looked good against the Seahawks last year when he came to Lumen, but everybody looked good against the Seahawks last year when they came to Lumen Field. So I don't know how much of that we can really sink our teeth into. I think he is a contingency plan. Geno Smith goes down. They're getting a guy for less than they would have paid Drew Lock, right? Because Drew Lock got, 4 or 5, I think, total out of the Giants when it comes to bonuses. They're giving the guy $1 million, right? He's making $1 million this year. He's making $1 million next year, right? This was strictly, to me, a cap-saving move by John Schneider to get a guy who might be on the same par with Drew Lock, and if not, maybe a skosh worse. But the savings that they took from Drew Lock to Sam Howell was just too much to turn down. So I get why they did it. I was on the air saying I hope this doesn't affect their draft plans. And in the end,
the fact that they've still got Christian Haynes in the third, makes the trade very palatable to me.
Right, but all the quarterbacks that they would have potentially taken were gone by the time they were on the clock. All those things were off the board. So I don't know what they would have done if a Michael Penix or a Bo Nix was sitting there when that draft pick came up. I got no clue, Jackson, what they would have done, but it doesn't matter because all those guys were gone. So this is Geno Smith's show, And I got to be honest with you, I think Geno Smith isn't just playing to be the starting quarterback. I think he's playing for an extension. I think Geno Smith is playing for a contract extension this year.
I totally agree with you, man. And look, I've been painted as some Geno apologist, and like, I'm sorry.
You're a Geno apologist, is what you are.
I'm sorry for being an apologist of a good quarterback. Like, isn't that the goal, to get a good quarterback? And especially when you put his performance over the last 2 years up against the rest of the NFL, and then you factor in what he's been being paid, I think he is one of the better values in the NFL, but he is playing to become not one of the better values in the NFL. And I'm super curious to see how that shakes out. Now, look, I think you and I are in lockstep that we feel the coaching staff improved maybe dramatically this offseason, but I want to focus on the personnel, and I want to zoom out, look at the offseason as a whole. Does it feel to you from a personnel standpoint like this team got better over the offseason, worse, or is it still too early to say?
I think it's too early. My early gut, and this is nothing new, I've said this on the air, I don't think they got significantly better really anywhere over the offseason. I mean, when you're bringing in an ancient guy like Laken Tomlinson to be your left guard, when you're going back to George Fant, who I love, to potentially be your right tackle, in case Abe Lucas can't play, I'm more fired up for the guys they got in the draft, to be honest with you. I'm more fired up for the extensions of guys like Julian Love. And honestly, the biggest move they made over the offseason, and I know this is a broken record, you take a lot of shit for being a Geno apologist, I take a lot of crap for being a Jamal Adams hater, okay? And so I am just so glad that guy's gone, right? I mean, there were points in time last year where when he was playing, I couldn't root for him. And I don't want to feel that way as a Seahawks fan. I don't want to feel that way as a Husky fan, Mariner fan, Sonic fan, Kraken fan. I don't want to not root for my guys. I thought he was a bad teammate. He was a bad locker room presence. That shit he pulled with that guy's wife was inexcusable and pathetic. Rule number one, never bring the wives or kids into it. Ever, ever, ever. I don't give a damn how much crap you're taking on social media, Jamal. Grow up. So I'm glad he's gone. Because I think that was a bad vibe for this football team. And then going from Shane Waldron, like we talk about the offseason additions and we focus on players, but guys, Shane Waldron to Ryan Grubb, okay? I mean, let's just talk about that for a second. If you're a Chicago Bears fan and you got Caleb Williams and Rome Odunze and Shane Waldron's in charge of getting the most out of those guys, are you freaking kidding me? I mean, I would be nervous as hell if I were a Bears fan about that guy being the dude that's responsible for molding Caleb Williams and Rome Odunze into stars. So the upgrade there is going to be unbelievable. The tight end situation, to me, wasn't really addressed much at all over the offseason. And they like to use tight ends. I mean, Ryan Grubb had, and maybe it's because McMillan was hurt and he had no choice but to get the ball to Jack Westover, but the tight end was not nothing in the Ryan Grubb system. It was not nothing whatsoever. I mean, remember, biggest play of the
Seattle
year
has a very dynamic tight end. I mean, that's the thing. If Fant stays healthy, we are going to see the Parkinson and Disley targets siloed to a much more athletic player.
No question. I mean, Noah Fant, he looks the part, right? When you look at Noah Fant, when you talk to Noah Fant, when you sit next to Noah Fant, he looks the part for sure. So I think he's going to take a bit of a jump this year, but I still don't think they have anybody that really scares defenses at that position. And then again, the linebacker spot, right? I mean, it's just, to me, it's kind of clear-cut the number one unit on the field where we just don't know a lot about yet, man.
Would you have paid Jordan Brooks what Miami did?
No, but I would have paid Patrick Queen what Pittsburgh did. I would have given him that kind of money. I was actually kind of surprised that Patrick Queen didn't end up in Seattle. And look, I mean, obviously it's Schneider's call when it's all said and done. We know he loves being the guy now to make that call because the other guy's gone. He's got full autonomy over everything. And if he didn't think it was the right way to spend the money, then great. I'm assuming he conferred with McDonald on that. Little John and Big Mac getting together and having those conversations. But I was surprised that Patrick Queen was not here. I think the Dolphins kind of overpaid for Jordan Brooks a little bit, to be honest with you, Jackson. I think we kind of know what he's all about. And I don't mind Dotson and Baker being here. I just got to see it. And guys on one-year contracts, as you said earlier on the show, sometimes is the best thing possible because you got a bunch of dudes that are playing for jobs and deals next year, and that's a good thing for the Hawks.
Right. And they're playing for jobs and deals for a coach that should be here for a while, right? Like, because when it comes to the linebacker position, I think more than any other position on the football field, what your responsibilities are reflective of the scheme, more than defensive line, more than the secondary. And so, yeah, I don't mind that, but you're right. Very, very unproven there. And so it leads me kind of into my next question here. We've talked about a lot of the moves that we do like. Were there any moves that they made that you weren't a fan of, or that you wish that they had done differently? Like, are there moves they didn't make you wish you had besides, say, Patrick Queen?
Yeah, I mean, I would have loved to have seen Queen. I would have loved to have seen maybe a top tier or maybe a more elite tier tight end brought in here to be a real weapon for them. I think Noah Fant with somebody else would have been pretty dynamic. I mean, Pharaoh Brown, right? You know, guys like that. I mean, does that really do a lot for you? I mean, not really. I think they're kind of weak at that position. I'm actually curious to see what they do with Westover. If he ends up making the football team, does he become that kind of like Patrick Ricard type guy that they had in Baltimore? Because Jack's more of a pass catcher, man. And if you saw him play at UW, you saw him bailing out Michael Penix, diving for balls all over the place. So I'm curious to see if they keep him. I think at wide receiver, they're going to probably keep maybe 7 guys. And McDonald mentioned that. He actually mentioned 7.
He did.
Bobo's on the team. The big 3 are on the team. If they keep 7 guys, does that mean that Westover has a chance to make it as kind of a hybrid fullback, tight end, kind of pass catcher, blocker kind of guy?
He's a very Harbaugh style player.
It's a total Harbaugh style of player. There's no question about it. That's why we thought this and San Francisco were maybe 2 of the best spots for Jack Westover. But I mean, look, obviously would have liked to have seen maybe a little more done on the left side of the offensive line to complement Charles Cross. Laken Tomlinson's probably a 1-year answer at best. I love Christian Haynes. I'm fired up for him, but there's going to be growing pains, right? There's going to be growing pains with him. And then Big Olu, who knows, right? I mean, all of us like Big Olu, but what have we seen from him? We've seen nothing from Big Olu. I mean, he had 1 start a year ago, and I thought he was going to take over for Evan Brown or Ethan Brown, whatever the hell. I keep getting the guy's name mixed up, by the way. That was kind of a running bit on the radio show, and he never did. So I think the interior of the offensive line, and Grubb was on the show, again, a couple of days ago saying they've had some problems with the interior of the offensive line so far.
Yeah.
I don't mind that, Jackson, because it was only week 2 of training camp with a total brand new system and a brand new coach. So I'm fine with that for now. But to me, those are kind of a couple areas maybe I wish they would have put a little more money into. And they had a lot of money, right? They had a lot of money over free agency. And who did they bring in that really blows your socks off? Who do they bring in that really kind of says, wow, this is an impact guy right here? And
Pharaoh Brown.
It was quantity over quality, to be honest with you.
Yeah. And you mentioned Oluwatimi, and he hasn't gotten a ton of airtime on this show yet, but I do think that he is one of the more important players on this team. And, we had Walter Jones on last year, and we were talking to him about his greatness, and he was quick to point out that when you're on offensive line, how good you are is not just reflective of how good you are. It's how good the other guys on the line are. It really is a chain where all of the links need to have strength. And it's so difficult to judge a young player like Olu when he's surrounded by bad offensive line play. So I think he's a big unknown, and I'm glad you brought him up because he does deserve the oxygen to be discussed, because that's the quarterback of the offensive line. So
he's your starting center. He's your starting center, man. He deserves the airtime. He's your starting center. He's a pretty damn important piece. And I totally agree with Walter. I think Walter would have been a Hall of Famer no matter where he played. But
of course,
can we really get the best out of Charles Cross if we're going to keep rotating left guards every single year with him?
No chance.
Are we really going to see Charles Cross become an elite, top-tier left tackle in the NFL if we keep changing his running mate every single year? So I think, to me, that's a position that John Schneider has to address this coming offseason. Because Laken Tomlinson's got 1 foot out the door. I'm not saying he's going to be bad this year, but he's not long for that job. We all know that. At some point, you're going to have to replace him. So, to me, that's a huge thing. And you're going into year 3 for Charles Cross. You're going to have to pick up the 5th-year option. After this year, you got to make a call on Charles Cross's 5th-year option. So, that's a huge developing story, man, potentially over the offseason. No doubt.
Yeah. And, I think things would have to go pretty poorly to not offer him at least the 5th-year option. And if it goes really great, maybe it's an extension. But finding a starting left tackle is the second hardest thing to do in football, besides finding a competent starting quarterback. So I think he's shown the competence to put himself in the driver's seat to at least get that 5th-year option. But you're right. if it's a revolving door next to him, it's going to be much more difficult to evaluate him moving forward. Now, speaking of moving forward, like if we shift our vision to the 2024 season and beyond, what's something that you're most curious or excited about with the Seahawks this upcoming year?
Yeah, I'm really curious to see two things. Like we said earlier, number one, how much does Mike Macdonald just let Ryan Grubb have the reins to the offense? How much does he just say, this is your baby? If we're sitting there on a 4th and 1 from the Seahawks 39-yard line, 4th and inches, how often did we just beg Pete Carroll to go for situations like that? Analytics say go for it. The data says go for it. You got a 99% chance of picking it up. Is he going to allow Ryan Grubb to be aggressive like that as an offensive coordinator, or is he going to be conservative the way Pete Carroll was? Because I think conservatism is dead in the National Football League. I think this is the wrong time to be conservative if you're playing in the NFL. You have inches to pick up inside your own 40. Go for it, get the damn first down, and let's roll. So I'm really curious to see how much Pete Carroll is in Mike Macdonald or how much Kalen DeBoer is in Mike Macdonald. You know, what kind of a gambler is he when it's all said and done? And then number two, you know, Boye Mafe, man. Boye Mafe blew up last year with a gigantic year sack-wise. I look at what Macdonald did for an old guy like Clowney in Baltimore and the year he had last year for the Ravens.
Unreal.
Are we looking at a 14, 15 sack season coming for Boye Mafe? Is Boye Mafe going to...
I think if Nwosu is healthy, that's in the range of outcomes because we saw Mafe dominate. I mean, set a franchise record for consecutive games with a sack. 7 straight games with a sack. Yeah. That's like Myles Garrett shit, right? Yeah, that's watch shit.
Think about the best pass rushers in Seahawk history. What 3 guys automatically come to mind? Nobody. That's the point. There's nobody.
Right, like Cliff Averill, maybe?
They don't have a great history. Michael Sinclair, Cliff Averill, they don't have a great history.
Patrick Kearney?
Yes, they don't have a great history at that spot. They really don't. And I think you got a shot here with a guy like Boye Mafe to not just blow up, but also be a very coveted guy around the NFL that could be very expensive for the Seahawks to hang on to. So what he did in Baltimore with those old dudes on that defensive line, I would be shocked if Boye Mafe did not take another huge jump this year with those guys.
I'm so glad you mentioned Mafe because he is what the Seahawks were hoping Darrell Taylor would be.
Yeah.
And Darrell Taylor is, to me, to make a baseball analogy, a situational relief pitcher, right? Like he's the lefty specialist that can come in and get the lefty power hitter out in a high leverage situation, but is like fodder for everybody else. And you see it, right? He'll go 6 weeks without a sack and then get 2.5 against a backup tackle or against someone who is maybe susceptible to a speed move. Whereas with Mafe, you really feel like, I think that one of the things that gets overlooked when you talk about Boye Mafe is that he's like a borderline Olympic level athlete, like a guy that broke the combine, and he has versatility to his game. He can win in different ways, but as soon as the threat of Nwosu off the edge was gone and teams could just focus on him, he got erased. And, you know, part of that is being young and learning how to overcome that. But I think that he has the tools in the toolbox. He's got a full set of clubs. You know, I feel like Darrell Taylor had driver and he had a 3-wood, but when it came to the finesse game, right? Like he's like me. He's good off the tee, but you get him around the green, it's like, who knows, right? So I feel like with Mafe, he's got all the clubs in the bag, but he still needs to be in scoring position. And I'm really, really hopeful that, McDonald's defense can put him in a position to do that. And of course, Nwosu staying healthy is going to have a huge impact on that. I think one thing that I'm really curious about is going to be neutral script pass run splits, right? And for all of Pete Carroll's reputation as being a run first guy, if you're a fantasy honk, you know, you've heard all the podcasts and the analysts saying, it's Pete Carroll, man. He's killing the passing game because he wants to run all the time. That reputation is from back when he had the LOB and back when he had the highest paid offensive line in the NFL, and he had Marshawn Lynch and he had a young Russell Wilson. For the last 5 years, the Seahawks have been every single year a top half in the league pass forward neutral script play calling team. And and some of that is good. I think that you have the personnel to lean into the passing game, but at some point, they also just haven't run very effectively outside of some hot streaks from Carson, Penny, and Walker over the years.
Yeah.
When it comes down to, you know what, we actually need to milk the clock right here, and we need to be able to run for 3 first downs. They've really struggled with that. And I think that's more reflective of the offensive line. The thing that I am most curious about, and this will come as a huge shock to anyone who reads my stuff, follows me on Twitter, or listens to the show, is I like DK Metcalf. I think he's one of the best wide receivers in the NFL.
Yeah.
And you look at his numbers, and there's a lot of people who bitched about his contract extension, made him a top 5 paid wide receiver. Oh, he's not a top 5 wide receiver. I'm not going to sit here and say he's a top 5 wide receiver. What I will say is that 2 years later, he's not among the top 12 highest paid wide receivers in the NFL. And that's the thing that I was just hammering on when they signed that extension, is like, sure, it's a top 5 contract. It's not going to be a top 5 contract next year. It's not going to be a top 15 contract 2 years from now. We're seeing that. Now, he is playing to become a top 5 paid wide receiver again. I think he has the talent. When you look at his numbers, you say, okay, he's kind of in that wide receiver 15 to 20 range from a volume standpoint. The dude's career high in targets is like 136, right?
Yeah,
the Seahawks have run the fewest plays in the NFL over the last 4 years. What I want to see is more damn plays run by this offense, higher volume, because I think that if you give DK Metcalf 160 targets in a year, you're going to see close to Devontae Adams type production, because his per target numbers are insane. So the number one thing that I want to see is I want to see a 9 target per game average for DK Metcalf. Get him to 150 targets this year and see what he does, because I think you're looking at a 1,400 yard receiver if you do that.
So I got my phone here, and I'm trying to find the picture of us literally begging Ryan Grubb to get DK Metcalf.
I saw the video.
When he was
the video cut out before he answered, though.
Yeah, well, I mean, look at what he did for Rome Odunze. Look at the amount of targets he got to Rome, and again, some of that may be because McMillan was banged up a little bit, but I mean, there's a lot there to unpack. I mean, first of all, I totally agree with you on DK, and my stance on DK Metcalf is simple. I think DK Metcalf should lead the NFL in touchdowns every single year as a wide receiver. I think he is unguardable in the red zone, and it's a crime. It is an absolute crime, Jackson, how little the Seahawks force-fed the ball to DK Metcalf in the red zone. For as much shit as Jimmy Graham takes when he was here for being a terrible blocker, and I kind of put that on the Seahawks, by the way, for using
100%
him like that.
That's on the Seahawks.
Okay?
He sued the NFL to be seen as a wide receiver, and they put his hand in the dirt.
But he led the league in touchdowns one year when he was here because they
100%.
got him the ball inside the 10-yard line. First and goal from the 10.
Groundbreaking strategy.
Second and 2 from the 13. Whatever. I want every ball going to DK Metcalf right in the corner, jump ball, throw it up, corner route, sideline, back, whatever you do. Single coverage on DK Metcalf is green. Green. Green means go. Green means throw the ball.
That is a one read play in the red zone if you have single coverage on DK Metcalf.
They overthink this stuff, and I'm not saying that I'm going to be able to get the Grubb and have any influence over him, but I'm going to tell him, Ryan, I love you, but if you don't get the ball to DK Metcalf in single coverage in the freaking red zone, you're a stupid idiot. Are you kidding me? Yeah. It is a welcome match.
He knows it. He did that with Rome constantly. He knows that.
He did. Absolutely. So I think that's an easy call. You got to let this guy lead the league. He should have 15, 16 touchdowns, at least one a game. You get in the red zone. I'm telling you, that's how good this guy is, and I totally agree with you.
He is.
And 170 targets. He should be top 5 in targets every single year. It's a freaking crime what they've done to him, man. Absolute crime. Totally agree.
I completely agree. All right, last question for you before we get out of here.
There's too much agreeing on this show. Let's find something we disagree with, by the way.
Okay.
Too much agreeing.
Well, we might hear. We might hear. So, all right, I'm put you in a situation. You have to. There's no bitching out on this. You have to bet $10,000 of your own money right now.
All right.
But you get $50,000 if you nail the prediction exactly.
All right.
How many games do the Seahawks win this year, and where does their season end?
They're going to go 11-6, and their season will end in the NFC Championship.
Okay, $10,000 of your own money's on the line.
But I'm getting
NFC Championship
5-1. I tell you what, I'm going to do. If I win the 50 grand, I'm going to buy this podcast. By the way.
Okay, all right. I think that number's a little low, but we can talk.
The 11's low.
I think the 50 is low.
Oh, really?
But we can talk.
Wow, nice. Look at you. Jackson Bevins has $1 million idea going here. All right. Gotcha.
I am stoked about the optimism there. I've got them at 10-7 and making the divisional round. I think they're good enough to win a playoff game. I think that the schedule is tough. I'm so glad that they have an easy-ish first month, but after that, it's going to get rough, and they're going to have to beat good teams late in the season in adverse conditions. And I think that the current version of Mike Macdonald is better than the recent version of Pete Carroll for equipping a team to win those games.
Well, I tell you what, again, I think they're talented. I think they have a lot of guys that should have been better than they were a year ago. I think getting rid of some of the nonsense in the locker room, like the Jamal Adams thing, by the way, is going to really help this football team. There's a clear vision now of what kind of player they want and what they kind of be. And you got a lot of hungry guys. You got linebackers that are hungry. You've got a wide receiver in DK Metcalf that is starving for a new deal. You got a quarterback in Geno Smith that clearly has a chip on his shoulder playing for a new contract here in the next couple of years. And then you have a bunch of offensive linemen that are playing for deals down the road. So I love where they are right now. I think the future is bright for this football team. I just think, again, the only question mark that I have is, do they have a very good offensive line? Or do they have an average offensive line? If they have an average offensive line, this could be the difference between a 9-8 and an 11-6 type year, man. It really could.
Yeah, I do agree with that. And I think that one thing that they have, one asset they have that we haven't mentioned yet that can provide a little bit of salve if there is struggles with the offensive line is JSN. I think Jacson Smith-Njigba is so good at winning early, and he was so miscast last year. And you mentioned the Chicago Bears now having three stud receivers and what appears to be a stud quarterback. And Seattle kind of had that last year. Mm-hmm. And JSN had basically like a Rondale Moore role in this offense. He was Tutu Atwell, right? Get him the ball at the line of scrimmage and let him create. Yes. And when I look at JSN, I see Keenan Allen with extra juice, right? Like I see somebody that is so good at winning between the 5 and 15 yards from the line of scrimmage range, which is what keeps drives alive. And so if the protection isn't what we're hoping it is, I do think that JSN provides a really valuable outlet, because let's not forget, this was the number one wide receiver consensus coming out of a very talented wide receiver class in last year's draft. He's a guy that had 300 yards in the Rose Bowl at 18 years old. I mean, special talent from an elite wide receiver program coming out of Ohio State. So I'm really curious to see how that goes. And I think, I love that the Seahawks have their bye right in the middle of the season this year. I think that's what every team is kind of cheering for when the schedule comes out. I think that Lockett will get a few more targets than JSN in the first half of the year. And I think Smith-Njigba absolutely drowns him in the second half of the year. I think that when it comes down to the high leverage games that decide playoff seeding, we're going to see JSN as a huge part of this offense.
Yeah. Well, I just think getting him the ball with room to run, right? I mean, that was my big complaint a year ago, is that they were just not putting him in spots where he could take advantage of his athleticism.
He's so good after the catch, man.
Just like think about, I know we keep referencing the Huskies because that is really all we have for Ryan Grubb. If we're going to watch tape of Ryan Grubb, we're watching Washington football from the last 2 years. You want to watch Jed Fish, you're watching Arizona football, right? You watch McDonald, you're watching Raven football. So we got to reference all those things until we start to see these guys play against Denver. But the fourth down sweep that they ran to Roma Dunze, the reverse sweep that won the Apple Cup on that big fourth down play, I think just getting the ball into Jacson Smith-Njigba's hands and letting him turn the corner. Let me ask you this. Do you feel comfortable with DK Metcalf winning a one-on-one matchup with a 5'10" corner? Of course you do. Do you feel good about Jacson Smith-Njigba outrunning most defensive players in the NFL? At least front seven players? Of course you do. So let's do that. Let's not overthink this, guy. Let's not be here or be stupid here. If you have a weapon that you think is faster than the guys covering him, then get him the goddamn ball and get him in space to run. Ryan Grubb's going to do that, dude.
Listen, you're the perfect person to ask this question because of your familiarity with both programs. One thing that I have struggled with is you've got a clear comp, in my opinion, between Rome Odunze and DK Metcalf, and Ryan Grubb has been unapologetic in making that same comparison. So I'm not breaking any ground here. I've struggled a little bit with Lockett and JSN in terms of their roles with Polk and McMillan, because I don't think Grubb needs to reinvent the wheel in terms of his offense, given the personnel that he's inheriting. Do you see Jackson Smith and Jigba as more of the Jalen McMillan or more of the Jalen Polk?
Yeah, I think, to me, Tyler Lockett or maybe remind me a little bit more of Jalen Polk. I mean, Polk's a little faster than Lockett, I think.
That's the way I lean.
But I think Polk would be Lockett and McMillan would be more Jackson Smith and Jigba. I mean, Jalen McMillan got kind of a raw deal a year ago, man, when he got banged up. He was going to put up some huge numbers for that football team. And
I freaking love that dude.
Healthy. I mean, halftime in the Michigan State
He's going to be so good.
Yeah,
he's going to be so good in Tampa Bay, man.
He's going to be great in Tampa. Polk's going to be great in New England. I mean, Adunze's, obviously a stud already, but I just think those three guys, they remind me so much of each other because of how consistent they are. That's why the little bout of the dropsies that Polk went through a year ago was so shocking, because that really never happened to anybody in the Husky system, and it doesn't really happen with these guys. I mean, DK obviously sometimes has hands of stone. Got to work on that for sure. Got to work on not throwing a fit.
No question.
Losing his temper. That's obviously the number one thing for him. But yeah, to me, those would be the comparisons. But this is one thing too. I don't know if you guys have discussed this or not, that for Grubb, what a time to walk into the NFL. I mean, he's walking into a situation with three great receivers, good backs, a good running back, an elite defensive coach. Ryan Grubb has always wanted to do this, and now he has set himself up, I think, to not just have success, but look, there's a dearth of coaches in the NFL, man. As far as head coaches, the same guys are getting rotated through and through.
100%.
Grubb had success in this system for a couple years. Don't be shocked if 2 or 3 years from now he's gone as a head coach in the NFL.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. You want to know a crazy stat? Opening day 2022, 2 seasons ago.
Yeah.
Of 32 offensive coordinators, how many are still offensive coordinators for that same team?
Oh, God, less than half. Less than half, easily. 10?
1.
Wow. That's
1.
bananas.
Ben Johnson of the Detroit Lions, and it's only because he turned down the Commander's head coaching job.
Right.
So,
well, he says he does.
I'm just encouraging people who are excited about Ryan Grubb. If he delivers, he ain't long for the post.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's the way football is now, right? That's the way football is at every level. I mean, dude, Jackson, if Jed Fish has real success at Washington, he's out the door. Out the door in a couple years. And guess what? All these players he's bringing in right now that we love recruiting-wise, he's going to bring them with him to wherever he goes as well. Same thing with the NFL, dude. Same thing with coordinators. Aiden Dirty is going to probably be a play caller for these guys in the next couple years. I think McDonald turns that over to him in a couple years from now. He's got a shop, and Ryan Grubb has the personality to be a head coach in the NFL. He's got the confidence and the chops to be a head coach in the NFL. So I think you're exactly right that if this guy has, and we want him to have success, right? We want these guys to be coveted by other teams. How many coaches on the Seahawks under Pete Carroll for the last 4 or 5 years were coveted by other franchises in the NFL?
His first 2 defensive coordinators, and that's it.
Right. None. Hardly any of them.
Quinn and Bradley, that's it.
Yeah. Ken Norton, no. Right? Chris Richard, no. Shane Waldron wasn't really coveted by anybody. And he ended up
Schottenheimer, Bevel. You name it, man.
Nobody was coveted. Nobody. So let's turn this into a factory. Let's turn this into a breeding ground. Let's
get a Mike McDonald tree.
And I hate saying this because I hate giving him credit, but
it's the Harbaugh tree.
Let's do what the Niners have done, right?
100%, man.
Do what San Francisco's done, because every coach, Kyle Shanahan, those guys down there, they turn assistants into coordinators and coordinators into head coaches, and they win.
Listen, there are 4 programs in the NFL that are better than everyone else at at that exact thing. And it is the Niners. It is the Ravens. Obviously, you got the Harbaugh thing. It's the Chiefs. I would love to see the Seahawks become that fourth team
totally agree.
In terms of like really being like, and McVay would be the fourth right now, where it's just like, okay, you come from this tree. I want to hand the reins of my program to you. And if you're getting your coordinators sniped for head coaching jobs, is generally an indication that things are going right at the top. All right, listen, man, I know that you and I could do this all day, but
we're done. Man, I thought we were going to keep going.
I really want to. I also know that you need to put some pants on because you have actual work to do today. Don't you do it? God damn it. Hey, we got some Sonic shorts. All right. I really thought you were going to be naked from the waist down when you stood up.
Hey, you're a married man. Relax.
I know. You can't be tempting me like that, man. Listen, man, we appreciate your time. Thank you so much for making the time to come in during what I know is a really busy stretch for you.
No problem. We'll do it again soon, buddy. Good to see you.
Yeah, I sure hope so.
Anytime you want to fill in, let me know. It's yours.
Okay. All right, man. I will. Look, before we let you go, for the very few listeners and viewers who aren't familiar and want to get more of your stuff, where can we find you?
Softy KJR on Twitter is the best way to do it. I'm not a big Instagram or TikTok guy. I get no idea. There's too much shit going on with those apps. Twitter's dummy friendly. I love it. It's like just watching a slot machine of information. So Softy KJR is the best way. 93.3 FM on the FM dial, iHeart app. Those are the best ways to see what we're doing. Got a bunch of stuff from Husky Media Day up there, including a couple of minutes with Steve Belichick, who I want you to watch that Steve Belichick and tell me if he reminds you of Chris Farley. All right? Just go check that out. Especially Chris Farley interviewing Paul McCartney. Hey, remember that time when you came to Washington?
So good.
That was awesome. So go check out Steve Belichick, and we got a bunch of stuff up there from Media Day yesterday. But back at the VMAC today, next 3 days. I think Julian Love's going to join us this afternoon, by the way. I got a lot of stuff with UW on Friday, kind of a big Big Ten day for them. Pat Chun's going to be on the show as well at 3 o'clock. So, yeah, we're omnipresent, dude. We're everywhere. On the radio, in your smartphone, podcasts like this, we're everywhere.
Yeah, and look, I give Softy a lot of shit and he pitches it back, but truly one of the best to do it. And, we've had a lot of the KJR family on this show. Really, make sure you're tuning into that. They got it going on. Softy, thank you again.
Can I show you something real quick before you take off?
Of course.
We got a second. So I'm downstairs.
Your pants are still on, right?
Pants are on. I'm going to show you this. This is my newest addition to the man cave. I think you do. You're a Husky fan, right, Jackson? You appreciate this. All right, look at that. Look at that bad boy right there. What do you think that is right there? Look at that. Dylan Johnson.
You know what that is? That's checkmate. That's checkmate is what that is.
That is check fucking mate, baby. Last Pac-12 championship ever. And all those Oregon fans can eat that for the rest of their life. Dylan Johnson, third down, right up their ass for the final Pac-12 championship ever.
Let's go.
Place of honor. Place of honor next to Junior. Right there. Here you go. All right, boys. See ya.
Right on. Appreciate you. As always, you can find Mike and I on social media as well. I am on Twitter at Jackson Bevins. That's Jacson. Remember that no K is okay when spelling my name. Mike is on Twitter at Mike Barwin, and the show itself is at Cigar Thoughts. You can catch full video episodes on our YouTube channel at Cigar Thoughts and find the rest of our socials at cigarthoughtsnfl.com. As mentioned previously, this episode is brought to you by Glenfiddich Premium Single Malt Scotch Whiskey. Y'all know I'm a huge fan of their lineup, and we are thrilled to have them on board as a sponsor of the show. If you're watching on YouTube, you've seen me enjoying a glass of their 15-year-old Solera cask, aged in rum barrels for a Caribbean finish. And one of the great things about a great Scotch is how well it plays with a good cigar. And once again, we do have our own special release of cigars that you can purchase at a terrific price as a listener of the show. The release of these Cigar Thoughts Stogies has been successful enough for us to continue offering them for the low price of $149. That's right, only $149 for a bundle of 10. As many of you know, we partnered with one of the most prestigious cigar manufacturers in the world to release these official Cigar Thoughts cigars, which you can order directly from cigarthoughtsnfl.com. Just follow the link on the show page to get these easy-to-smoke stogies rolled with 13-year aged premium Dominican tobacco leaf, or You can hit us up on Twitter or Instagram, and we'll send you the details directly. A lot of you have taken advantage of that option. Happy to do it. And these cigars, they come with a Boveda humidification pack and a Mahler storage bag to make sure they stay fresh, whether you have a humidor or not. Of course, you can listen to this show and read every article at fieldgoals.com. And if you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts and you like the show, please drop us a 5-star rating and leave a quick review. Thank you to all of y'all listening for your continued support of the show. We know that you've only got so much time for podcasts in your life, and it's an honor to be a part of that for y'all. Please know that by sharing this show on social media and with your friends, you give us the juice to keep making this happen. We'll be back soon, but in the meantime, onwards and upwards, my friends.